Your slides.
Okay.
It's good.
Perfect.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Maria Pregnolato, and I would like to present at this workshop a project that is more a sort of community building. So we are building a community around a gap that we think we found in the landscape of resilience, which is resilience to flooding, in particular in the context of infrastructure. And the case study that I will present today is in the UK, in the city of Exeter, because it's a region which is very flood prone. This is a joint effort because, as I said, we are a community and we are also 3 universities within the GW4 network, the University of Bristol, the University of Exeter and Cardiff University. So just to give a bit of background, I don't know what's happening. I think you know how much natural hazards are a problem for cities, starting from floods, but also wind, landslide, heat waves, and earthquake. And the problem is that the backbone of cities are infrastructure, and for which I mean the transport system, the energy supply, the water supply, the communication. And the very tricky part here is the fact that all of them are connected. So there is a very high risk of cascading effects. So if we were able to protect our infrastructure, we are much more likely to guarantee the strength and the robustness for the whole society. This because when natural hazards hit infrastructure, we have, first of all, the service disruptions, so a less functionality of the infrastructure themselves, with power cutoff, lack of accessibility, and also victims and casualties. So I think we all know, especially in Europe, how many flood events has happened in the last years. And this is an example of London from 2021. So in particular in urban environments where we have impermeable surface, flash floods and urban water flooding is really common. And when this happens, all the transport infrastructure gets stuck, starting from the tube and then arriving to slowing down the traffic with bad repercussion for all the city. So, and this situation is actually not going to improve because we know that urbanization is going to bring more and more people into cities. Climate change is going to increase the likelihood of extreme events and their intensity. And also there are underlying complexities in the urban environment. As I was saying before, cascading effects between infrastructures, but also the more reliance, for example, on technology. So our community and our project is targeting infrastructure resilience to floods with the aim to produce new tools for better planning and decision making. And as I was saying, we are 3 universities with also external stakeholders who tried to integrate our different expertise in order to produce a more developed model, which is making the most of all our pieces of research. And in particular, we are trying to put together the hydro transport model that was developed by the University of Exeter through a European project, a flood transport curve that I developed during past years at the university, at Newcastle University, the evacuation model, which was developed for pedestrian at the Cardiff University, and then experimental data about vehicle and pedestrian stability, which are available in the literature. As I mentioned, the study area is Exeter, which is in Devon, in the UK. This is because it's a flood-prone area, and here we have some examples from past flooding and historical events, and also we had available data from previous modeling results and projects. So here we are trying to develop stability curves in order to understand when a road can be considered safe to be used by vehicles based on flood depth and flow velocity. And this is, I would say, it's the first novelty of this job, because in the past, most of the modeling studies are based only on flood depths. Here instead, we are trying to define these instability zones by using a combination of flood depth and flow velocity, dividing then the hazard classification into 3 parts: the safety zone, where there is no change in the vehicle performance, the uncertain zone where there is a probability of the vehicle to reroute, and then an instability zone, which is a zone of the road which is considered closed because too dangerous for the vehicle to pass through, and so the rerouting of the vehicle is needed. This is the application to Exeter, in which we are using ArcGIS and Sumo, and we started to classify the various areas of the road according to some flood simulation of past events. And this is what actually in detail Sumo can do. So when you are able to identify the hazard classification in the streets, Sumo then will reroute the vehicles according to certain criteria. And these criteria can be defined. So you can say to the vehicle to follow the vehicle above, you can put some aversion of the risk, or you can just simply set up an algorithm for the shortest path or the shortest distance. Also for pedestrian, we are developing a model. So there are various mechanisms of evaluation of the evacuation of routing and pedestrian in the literature, based on the various mechanisms of stability of the pedestrian. Of course, we have different classes of pedestrian because we can consider adults, we can consider children, or also vulnerable categories. And the thresholds of velocity and depth for these categories are different. What we are trying to do here is to modeling a sort of evacuation system, so to establish safe areas in which people can go during the events, and also safe routes in order to reach them with a very low danger. And also in this case, we are defining different stability and instability zones based on depth and velocity of the flood water. What we are using here is an evacuation model based on cellular automata-based dynamic route optimization, which is also called CADRO, and essentially is able to optimize over a series of criteria the shortest path with and without flooding for a pedestrian. And here we can implement various criteria in order to understand which is the best flood evacuation route according to the pedestrian class in order to reach the safe place. Future development of this research will be to complete the cityscape modeling for Exeter for both vehicles and pedestrian, and also to try to identify these safe routes, because we think that this identification is very much important for the preparedness of the city, so that when an event happens, both vehicle and pedestrian already knows what to do. Of course, here we see a kind of gap in the implementation of it, because we would expect the city to put forward some mechanisms such as information of the population, of signaling of these safe routes in order to make it happen. And we are working with the Devon County Council in order to understand how this can be implemented. We would like also to integrate vehicle and pedestrian modeling. So for example, there could be someone starting with the vehicle that decide to abandon it and then start to walk. So we like also to try to model this type of hybrid mode interaction. And then we would like to test our tools and our models, perhaps for another flood-prone city, to see how the model works, and also for comparison. As I was saying, this more than a project is a community based on transport resilience to flooding. So we had workshops in the past, aiming to engage with stakeholders, with the industry, and with the broader community in the UK working on the topic. And moving forward, we would like more and more people join us, given that now remotely working is much more easier. So this is a very open invitation to everyone who would like to work on transport resilience to flooding to get in touch and enjoy our community together. And possibilities for this community are to develop joint case studies, also to exchange inputs about gaps and challenges, as well as just share expertise and best practice, because sometimes we don't really know what each other is doing. So it's really a matter to put together our knowledge. And then perhaps when we will grow up as a community, I'm interested to build some subgroups perhaps focus on specific interests, for example, early warning, evacuation, risk assessment, and so on. And anyone is welcome to put ideas and their leadership forward in this. And finally, of course, there is a big interest to write joint proposal and projects together, thinking about big projects, but also smaller ones, such as co-supervision of students or just a small collaborative pot of funding that every now and then can appear. So with this, I would like to thank you for your attention, and please get in touch or ask questions during this session. Thank you.